on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is integrity, which is an integration and alignment of our behavior with our values. So it should be an interesting conversation, values-based and intentionality. So before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, today we're talking about integrity. And here's the thing, we all do things that we're not proud of at some point in our lives. It happens. We're human. We make mistakes. We're going through all kinds of periods in our lives. This is where it's really valuable to recognize ourselves as process rather than outcome, like not a fixed entity, that we actually can grow and expand and evolve over time. And if we can allow that for ourselves, we can look back on our past and say, wow, I was a jerk, or I was acting like a jerk. And we can allow ourselves to make amends when they're necessary, when we have done wrong, or when we have not been in alignment with our values. We can make efforts to correct that, or to correct it, make amends. So if we don't, here's the thing, we carry the guilt and the shame of those, I'm just going to call it transgressions. Who are we transgressing against? Our innate values. And so we carry that, the repercussions of those behaviors with us. And if we don't own up to those breaches of our values, then what happens is that they eat away at us, often in ways that we can't even perceive, in ways that we're not even present to, because we'll often justify and rationalize and deny our part in something. We'll become self-righteous oftentimes and indignant, and all of these are defenses against facing ourselves. So I was speaking with a client yesterday who was talking about an altercation, an ongoing altercation that they're having with another person. And it became clear in the conversation that they had a righteousness about it. They had a lot of upset and indignation about it. And they also were deeply disturbed by it. And so that feeling of being disturbed by something, to be upset in the face of an injustice, or a dispute, when we look at the upset that we have, first of all, it's important to look at the upset that we have, because that's a communication from our beingness, our emotional intelligence, to say, hey, pay attention here, there's something amiss. And when we have an extreme reaction, it's like a red flag pointing us to something that is calling for our attention. So this ongoing dispute was calling for this person's attention, and for them to look at what was going on with them in the context of this interaction that has been so unpleasant for them. And what showed up was that they were pretty far out of integrity. And they took advantage of this other person, and the benevolence of this other person, in ways that don't meet their own personal standards of behavior. So there was shame and there was guilt about it. And the way that they were dealing with the shame and guilt was by making the other person wrong. And it's interesting because I had another conversation with somebody on Monday about this same thing, that when when we have something going on with somebody else, we often make them wrong. Like when we're not fully communicating, even, it doesn't necessarily mean that we did something wrong, but if we're not fully in communication, if we're not expressing something, like if we're holding a resentment, for example, against somebody else, we're making them wrong for the fact that we're not communicating what's going on with us in some way, shape, or form. It's a really interesting dynamic. And when we feel like we've done something wrong, we often make the other person wrong to justify our behavior. It's very interesting that we do that, because we don't want to face ourselves in the mirror. We don't want to see that we've done something that we're not proud of, or that we've acted in a way that we're ashamed of or embarrassed by, etc. So it got us to a conversation where we were talking about making amends. And it reminded me, or I shared a story about myself where someone in my family lent me a bunch of money and I hadn't gotten the opportunity to pay it back. And my circumstances finally changed, and I was in a position to actually pay it back, not without some challenge, but I actually could pay it back. However, the person had passed. And how was I to make amends? And I was looking at this, and it occurred to me that I could give that money to a charity that this person had championed in their name, in their honor. And when I came up with that way of redeeming myself to myself, obviously it wasn't going to affect the person who passed at this point, right? But to redeem myself to myself, to honor my commitment. When I made that decision, all of a sudden I just wept from the bowels of my being, from the marrow of my bones, the deep gasping, weeping that comes from a release, or comes with a release. For me, it was a release of energy and emotion that I didn't even realize that I had been carrying for more than 40 years, carrying the burden of that misalignment with integrity, with my own integrity, my own integration, where there was this cognitive dissonance and this experiential dissonance between my values and my behavior. And it was such a freedom for me to make that commitment, which is a challenge. It's not an easy commitment for me to keep, to be paying down that debt. But it was deeply freeing. And the liberation that comes from completions and the commitment to our own integrity, our own integration, is profoundly powerful, important, and impactful. And I can't emphasize the power of that, because for me, here was this big upset that was working on me for pretty much all my life, the bulk of my life, that was an impediment to my abundance, because I had this out. I had this place where I wasn't in alignment, where I wasn't fulfilling my own values, my own, I wasn't following my own North Star. So on some level, all that time, I was punishing myself for not having risen to that commitment. And this person that I was talking to about their integrity was realizing how they also were not in alignment with their commitments. And this actually had started, this conversation had started the week prior, where we had identified another place where they had lied to somebody. And the irony was that they lied to somebody because they were trying to generate trust. And I'm speaking this not as a condemnation of that person, but as a using this as an example of the things that we do, that we justify, that really do not serve our deepest commitments. When we're out of alignment like that, when we're lying to somebody to generate trust, I mean, it's pretty obvious that there's a massive disconnect there, right? And so this person chose to come clean with the people that they lied to. And the experience of that was feeling liberated because they were being true to their values. They were aligned with what they valued. And then the challenge about this is it's a slippery slope, meaning that as we start cleaning up our messes, more messes appear oftentimes where we get to look at and find ways to make amends, reconciliation. That's what we're talking about, where we're looking to find ways to right our violations of self. Even if the person that's been wronged isn't around anymore, that we need to find a way to make things right for ourselves, because we carry the burden of those, I'm calling them transgressions. They're transgressions against ourselves, let alone against others, whatever, but that we have violated our values, our own values. Because until we can right that in some way, shape, or form, we can't trust ourselves. And on some level, we're likely to be self-punishing. And that can show up in the context of relationship. It can show up in the context of money. It can show up in all kinds of contexts. We just need to get right with ourselves. And it may require some kind of worldly action. And it may not. There may be a way that we can get right with ourselves, that we can complete these misalignments in other ways. I can just say that the revelation for me in making the commitment to clear up my financial debt was lifting a burden that was so heavy that I hadn't ever understood the impact of. The burden was so profound that it was keeping me from being able to move forward in ways that I hadn't even recognized. It was impacting me on an other than conscious level for years and years and years. And so stepping into that reconciliation allowed me to step into abundance. It allowed me to be worthy of abundance, where I didn't have to be punishing myself anymore. I didn't have to be holding this idea that I couldn't meet my financial responsibilities. It allowed me to allow myself to be worthy in a way that I hadn't previously. Because we do impose these ideas on ourselves. The person that I owed the money to had essentially written it off. You know, they forgave the debt, but I didn't, unknowingly. And I carried it for years and years. So to unburden myself was incredibly profound. And for this person to tell the people that he had lied to that he lied was his unburdening of himself. And that also was tremendously profound for him and opened the pathway to be able to clean up other transgressions. And I say transgressions, again, from our own vantage point. Yes, other people may believe that we've transgressed. And if we're really in an upset around that, which is what triggered this conversation with this person, then we can recognize, oh, you know what? Something's out of alignment in me too. Good morning, Sue. How wonderful to have you joining us this morning. Welcome. We're talking about integrity. So, you know, when we've perpetrated a lie, this was another, or a withhold even. So this is another situation where a client had not shared a trauma that they experienced as a child. They had never shared it with their family. And as a result, there was this distance that was always there because they were hiding this from their family. They were afraid it would hurt their family members too much, and they didn't, and that's why they didn't share it. And finally, when they did share this traumatic experience with the family, it brought the family together. It removed a barrier that they had been holding between themselves and the family. So it opened an avenue for deeper connection. It opened an avenue for deeper communication. And this person values love, connection, communication. And so the lifetime of that, carrying that burden alone, was released. And the thing is that we can do that even if the person that we've withheld from is passed, is gone from the physical world, because our minds don't discern, don't make a distinction between what's real, quote unquote real, and what's vividly imagined. And so we can put ourselves into a situation where we can reconcile so many things that material life looks like there's no more opportunity to reconcile, but we can. And so I invite you to look for the places in your life where there are withholds or misalignments of values, where you have violated your own values, and look for ways, creative ways even, that you may be able to create reconciliation. Because what's on the other side of that for you is freedom. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like and follow Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it's a deep pleasure and privilege to share these morning musings on what it is to be human. And until next time, so much love to you.